All righty. Well, hey everyone, and a happy Friday or a Fri-yay, however you're feeling as we head into this weekend. You are tuning into another week of Roswell Park's Ask the Experts webinar series. I'm Rebecca Vogt, the Media Relations Specialist at Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center in Buffalo, New York. We want to give a shout out to all of those who are joining us for the first time. Very much a big welcome to all of you. We do hope that you find this series both informative and also helpful. And for those of you returning, we are so happy to have you back, and we're sure to cover a whole lot of new questions today. Now, last week we slowed it down a little bit, which is actually kind of difficult for me to do because, as you can tell, I do talk very fast. So it is kind of nice to kind of shift it down a couple of notches and just slow it down. And we got a lot of great advice on mindfulness meditation. And what's great about that is that full video is available for on-demand viewing on both of our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as at roswellpark.org/patient webinars. Today, we are continuing with this wellness theme and trend, and we are focusing on self-care and yoga. We are so very fortunate to be joined by Dr. Kate Glaser. Dr. Glaser is an assistant professor of oncology in the Department of Cancer Prevention and Control. Dr. Glaser, thank you so much for being here. First, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to do this week, and I've really liked the trend of how we've moved into sort of focusing on self-care and working on stress reduction, especially in this current time, right? It's important all the time, but especially right now. I'm a medical anthropologist by training. I'm a health disparities researcher, so I do a lot of work in cancer prevention, but I also work on the survivorship front. I'm a co-leader of the cancer screening and survivorship program at Roswell Park, and I've led the yoga program for the last 3 years. I found yoga myself when I was in college as a stress reduction sort of technique. You know, we're always searching for ways to reduce stress in many times of our life. And that kind of led me to being a long-term practitioner. I spent some time in India practicing yoga. And then in the last few years, I've been fortunate and sponsored by Roswell and the Alliance Foundation to become a yoga teacher. We all wear many hats, right? Right now, I'm a researcher. I'm a mom who's trying to homeschool my kids. I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend. And it's really nice to also be in this time a yoga teacher to try to share these practices with everyone. So.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Glaser. I appreciate that. So, of course, as we are foraying into several weeks now of how we handle the pandemic from our homes or, wherever we are at this current moment. And of course, it is so much more important, now more than ever to take time for ourselves. We do hope that today will help provide you some valuable insights on why we all kind of need to practice this self-care and how to do it, and also a couple of tangible examples of some very simple yoga practices. We are here to provide as much advice as we humanly can cram into 30 minutes. While we do have several pre-submitted questions that we'll have Dr. Glaser get to first, there's always that option, drop down on the bottom, there's that little chat bubble. You can access that down below, submit your own questions throughout the next half hour that we have here, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. Please make sure to send your questions just to the panelists, or you can also check mark the box anonymous if you do not want to have your name associated with your question. That all being said, Dr. Glaser, let's get started with one of the top questions, and that is, what is self-care and why is it so important?
That's a really, really good question. And self-care in itself, it is rather self-explanatory. It really, truly does mean taking care of yourself. But we often find that so hard to do. Self-care practices can be defined in many ways, from hygiene to how we eat, how we sleep, how we do physical activity, how we have stress reduction techniques in our life. And yoga is part of a broader philosophy around self-care. But it is one tool that we can have in our toolbox to try to help address that. But really, the foundations of how we're taking care of our bodies, how we're taking care of our minds, those are all really critical things, especially right now with what's currently going on, but any day life as well, having those kind of tools fall back on. I see our healthcare workers and people on the front lines right now feeling a tremendous amount of stress. We're so grateful for all that they're doing and for all that they're doing for us. And I think these are even more important times to take that pause and actually reflect on how we're treating ourselves and make sure that we're taking care of ourselves both in mind and body.
110,000%. I absolutely agree with you on that. And that does sort of lead us into our next question. I'm a busy mom and a caregiver. How do I make time for myself? It feels selfish. I know we had Dr. Bouchard on just a week or so ago talking about the caregiver side of things, but yeah, I kind of want to present it to you. How does someone, kind of look into sort of this yoga and self-care if they're so busy juggling so much?
And that is another really great question. I mean, not just in this current times, but any time. Now we're all wearing so many more hats than we may have in the past, but it's really, really important. Even as a busy mom, I can say this, that it's so critical to take that time for yourself. A really good friend of mine and colleague, Dee Johnson, said this to me a couple weeks ago, not personally to me, but to one of my colleagues, to say, you have to put your oxygen mask on first. This whole concept of doing that, we can't take care of others unless we're taking care of ourselves. And though it may seem selfish in the end, the benefit that everyone gets from that is so critical. And it starts with how you treat yourself. And that's, even if it feels selfish, it's really important to do.
Now, I know we all know about sort of yoga itself, and some of us have taken classes here and there. Some people have never even, touched a yoga mat or gone into a studio or even, put something on YouTube. So can you really break it down for us? What is yoga at its core? And also just sort of what are the benefits of it?
That's another really great question. So yoga is a very ancient 5,000-year-old practice. And the word yoga itself means to yoke. It means to connect the mind and the body. And that is done through breath and through gentle movement. So these are all different ways that yoga kind of ties into that. There are many forms of yoga out there. And so I think we may talk a little bit more about that. But in general, that whole connection to taking that time, and as automatic as the response that breathing is, we often forget to do it. And one very important thing about yoga is that when you do that, you really start to disengage what we call the sympathetic nervous system. That's that fight and flight mode that we're often in, right? Things are busy, things are crazy, and we function in that way. But actually taking that time, stepping back, focusing on your breath, centering yourself, that's where you can start to disengage that and move into what they call more of a parasympathetic or rest and digest sort of phase, so that we're not constantly firing stress hormones, that we're not reacting in certain ways. So those are all, I think, really the foundational pieces of yoga, and that's kind of the intention of it overall.
It does seem like a lot, though, to think about when you're really not supposed to be thinking about a lot when doing yoga. That kind of leads us into sort of another question of, someone's interested in yoga, but it seems kind of intimidating, with sort of the stuff that you have talked about. I mean, is it as hard as it looks, to get the breathing in, but then also like someone who's not maybe as flexible? How do you juggle all that?
That's a really good question. You often hear people say, oh, I can't touch my toes, so I can't do yoga. And that's absolutely a myth. That's not true at all. And I think what we're going to go through later today is actually going to show a little bit of that actually yoga is something that anyone can do. But it's finding the right form of yoga that really resonates with you. And there are other mind-body practices that may resonate more, Tai Chi or Qigong, mindfulness meditation. Those are other forms of self-care. But hopefully today everybody gets a little taste of what some versions of yoga can be, a seated version, and how I often call that even office yoga. It's something that I integrate into my daily life at work just to try to take breaks and try to stretch, and recenter yourself, right? So we know there's tremendous amounts of benefits to yoga. So finding a way to actually do it, or finding a way to do it gently, is really important. We've seen great benefits in terms of research from reducing low back pain, which is a very chronic issue in the United States, for cancer-related fatigue, for our cancer survivors, for sleep quality, and just overall stress reduction from all of the different stressors that we have. But I would caution people at the beginning to try to find something that's more of a beginner style yoga, or something that's maybe more gentle and restorative, that would be more on the therapeutic side as a beginning point. Of course, making sure that you're medically cleared to do some of these physical activities that's a very important point. But starting with something that's a foundational level, that's not jumping into something that's more of a physical activity, because there's so many different, we're inundated by all these different types of yoga out there. And the program that we offer at Roswell Park that we started in May of 2017 is really more of a gentle restorative yoga that's accessible to anyone. And that's, I think, really important to find the right place to get started.
That's wonderful. One other thing, and I think this might lead us into one part of sort of your demonstration, is hearing about the importance of breathing during yoga and meditation. Stress the importance of, being aware of your breath.
Yeah, so again, that is one of the foundational pieces of yoga, because it connects the mind and the body through that breath work. And once again, just finding that focus, closing your eyes, saying, taking a deep breath. I feel like everyone kind of knows that may be beneficial, but we often forget that when we're stuck in those moments. And I think about it as a mother, when you see teachers who have to tell their kids, they say, you need to sit down and take a deep breath, or take 5 deep breaths, right? And that's just that technique of using your breath to settle your body, to recenter yourself. And, whether you do it with your eyes closed or a soft gaze, that can often help reset your mood.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I guess that really does sort of lead us into a bit of a series on seated yoga. And if you want to take us through that, we're all eyes and ears and arms and legs.
Okay. Great. All right, I'm just going to scooch back so that everyone can see me. And one of the important pieces of yoga, just one little bit more, is that you really want to find a chair, if you start with seated yoga, that's not going to roll around or move. And one thing you want to do, you can either keep your shoes on or take them off. I prefer taking mine off. You really want to have your feet firmly planted, stacked underneath your knees. This is a really important piece of it. If that doesn't happen, you can take either yoga blocks or books, anything that can help support bringing that knee directly under your foot. But that's for a seated yoga, or even if you're doing yoga on a mat, you want to find these points of balance. So for anyone who is in a chair, I would invite you, if you're interested, to come and sit at the edge of that chair, to firmly plant your feet underneath your knees, stack your spine as straight as you can, and just start to notice your breath. If it helps to close your eyes or soften your gaze and look at a single point, and just start to notice. Not forcing anything, just noticing. Becoming a little lighter with each inhale, and letting go of anything that doesn't serve you with each exhale. And as you continue to focus on that breath, start to settle in to the space. Letting go of anything that's happened so far today, not thinking of anything yet to come, but just being truly present in the moment, right here, right now. And as you continue to inhale and exhale, focus on any areas of your body that you might be holding on to any tension. Releasing a little more with each exhale, and grounding down a little more with each inhale. And if it helps to start with the crown of your head, releasing any tension you might be holding on there, moving down the space between your eyes, relaxing your jaw, softening your tongue, Continuing to inhale and exhale, moving down through the throat and neck, releasing any tension there, releasing any tension you might be holding in your shoulders or your arms. Breathing deeply into heart center, expanding the abdomen, your stomach area with each inhale, releasing any tension you might be holding on to in your hips, down through your thighs and knees, and out through your feet and ankles. And continuing to inhale and exhale in this fashion, letting go once again of any tension you might be holding on to or any spots you might have missed. Taking that body scan back up through your feet and toes, up through your legs. Breathing deeply once again into your hips and stomach. Moving up again through heart center, up through the neck and throat. Softening the jaw, relaxing the eyes, and moving out once again through the crown of the head. And as you continue to inhale and then exhale here, you can set an intention for your practice if something comes to mind or not. If nothing does come to mind, I would offer a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for this community that supports us around us, for this time we share here together. Grateful for our health, for our families. Taking 2 or 3 more deep inhales and exhales here. And when you're ready, just gently opening your eyes if they've been closed. We'll do just a little gentle movement, starting with some neck rolls, dropping the right ear towards the right shoulder, breathing into that space along the left side of your neck. On your next inhale, dropping chin towards chest, releasing the tension in the back of the neck and the cervical spine. Continuing to breathe. And then on your next inhale, dropping left ear towards left shoulder, releasing that second side of the neck. On your next inhale, coming again to center. We'll take that one more time, a little faster this time. On an inhale, dropping right ear towards right shoulder, keeping your shoulders down, lengthening through that side of the neck. On your next inhale, dropping chin towards chest. Continuing to breathe. And then on your next inhale, dropping left ear towards left shoulder, or opposite, whatever way you want. It's okay. Continuing to breathe. And then coming up again, once again to center. Taking some shoulder rolls on an inhale, bringing your shoulders up, back, and down. Moving gently into those spaces. If you sit at a computer, especially if you're not at your normal workstation or at a normal place, this can feel really good. Continuing to breathe, releasing that. You can clasp your hands together and just start to do some figure eights as you continue to breathe, loosening the joints of the wrists and shaking that out. Planting your hands firmly on your knees, we can take a couple rounds of seated cat-cow. On an inhale, lifting the chest upwards, lifting the gaze, and then on an exhale, rounding the spine. Just moving through these 2 shapes, starting to wake up the spine and move through the body. Taking 1 or 2 more. On an inhale, lifting the gaze. On an exhale, rounding the spine. And coming once again to neutral. Lifting the right foot off the ground. You can take a couple ankle rolls, moving in one direction and then another. Releasing that side, picking up the second leg, doing a couple ankle rolls to the left, and then moving in the opposite direction. Releasing that side. Continuing to focus on the breath. One thing that we do often in yoga is something called the sun salutation, and we can do a couple seated ones here, and then we can open up to more questions. So on an inhale, you lift the arms, lift the gaze. On an exhale, lower, coming to some seated forward fold. Inhaling, pressing the hands into the shins or the knees, coming to a halfway lift. Exhaling once again to a seated forward fold. And then inhaling all the way up again, and then bringing hands down through heart center. We'll do that 2 more times. On an inhale, lifting the arms, lifting the gaze. Exhaling, folding over into a seated forward fold. Inhaling, placing your hands on shins, halfway lift. Exhaling to a seated forward fold. And then inhaling all the way back up, arms sweeps. Exhaling, hands through heart center. Last one, lifting the arms, lifting the gaze. Exhaling, folding over to a seated forward fold. Inhaling, lifting the heart and the gaze, halfway lift. Exhaling to a forward fold. And inhaling all the way up again, once again, and exhaling down through heart center. That's just one example of a seated version of a sun salutation. At the end of yoga practice, we take a moment to just reflect in a final relaxation pose. So if your eyes are open, I would invite you to gently close them or once again soften your gaze. Release any of that active breath work you might have been doing. You can place one hand on your heart or one hand on your belly. Feeling your heartbeat, feeling alive. Being grateful for this opportunity to be here together, for this opportunity to share. I thank you for your time today, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. So one thing actually that's kind of like popped up into my head during this is that, there's always a mention in yoga, and you mentioned it too, about sort of the focus on heart center. Why is that so important?
There's a couple different pieces of yoga where you often focus. The space between the eyes where we hold a lot of tension, heart center, bringing that back to, the actual where your heart beats, where you can feel that feeling of being alive, especially when you place your hand on your heart. Once again, it just kind of helps you refocus on these bodily functions that are automatic, that we don't often think about, but that actually connect us, that mind to the body once again. So heart center, it's often used as a cue. It's easier to recognize, but it's kind of one that is again bringing it back to that feeling of being alive.
Now, I know so many of us are home right now, and can take some time out to participate in a chair session sort of thing. But once everyone kind of gets back to work and everything, is there any sort of allotted time that you recommend people set aside if they're able to do it on their lunch break? Does it have to be a full half hour? Can it just be like an express 10-minute sort of thing? Is it just whatever suits your fancy?
That is a really good question. I think that it's very important to take whatever time you can for yourself. So even if you have 5 minutes on a lunch break to sit and disconnect, unplug. We're so connected to devices these days that we forget that we really need to unplug every once in a while and just focus on ourselves. So taking a few moments here and there, whatever works for you, it's starting that practice on its own. People who often practice meditation, which is another component of yoga, but is also part of mindfulness-based meditation, they start slowly. You might take 5 minutes one day, increase to 10, maybe the following week, but just trying to integrate that into your daily life. And whether it can be actual doing some of the yoga movements or just taking the time to sit and breathe and be quiet and disconnect, those are really the most foundational pieces of it. And figuring out a way that can fit into your daily life is how you really start that self-care process. So I would say, as much as we all want to be able to go to a 60 or 90-minute yoga class, that doesn't always fit in everybody's reality. So whatever you can carve out, whether it's the morning or the afternoon at lunchtime or in the evening, whatever your cycle is, that's where you really want to try to find those moments to take time for yourself. Does that answer the question?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, it's fantastic. And sometimes I've noticed too that like, if I just spend like 10 minutes during lunch, it really helps wake me up for sort of that next half of the day too, because sometimes if you're sitting at your desk for too long, it's just like all of a sudden like just droopy eyes happen, but just a little bit of movement, a little bit of blood flow, like you kind of get back up and moving again. There is one question that has popped in. Can you recommend sort of a beginner yoga class? I know you have a couple of videos on our Roswell Park YouTube page doing, a couple of movements as well, but is there anything that you can recommend for someone who's like really sort of at base level?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought up our yoga videos. So yeah, on the Roswell Park YouTube page, we do have 11 yoga videos that are varying sequences. Some are just breath work, some are seated movements, some are standing postures. So it can kind of give you a feel initially of the different ways that you move through a yoga practice. Locally, we have some other really great studios. I was trained at East Meets West, which does a lot of variety of classes, from beginner and restorative classes to more advanced. The Himalayan Institute is also a local resource that we have that does the same. They offer just a large variety of classes so that you can start with something at more of a beginner level. And a lot of yoga studios right now are actually putting out yoga videos that are free. So you can sort of sort through them, but make sure that you're finding one of those that is a little bit more geared towards beginner, that's foundational, that is something that's most accessible to where your starting point is. Because jumping into something too advanced, like anything, might get frustrated. So starting with that foundation level is really important. And then I feel like the yoga community around us is really trying to embrace this time, which is so nice to see the way that they've put out so many videos that are free, or they've asked for donations. So there's a lot of good ways to do that too. And I'm actually starting up a yoga study this summer that's looking at stress reduction. And for that, we're going to be putting together 12 more videos that are, again, at a beginner sort of pace, at a gentle sort of, so that should be up on our YouTube page coming shortly. I know I saw another question in there about our Tuesday program, which we really hope to resume soon, but we're kind of still in that pause of figuring out when the best time to do that and how to do it most safely. But those resources that we have online are something that we can offer in the meantime.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So you're telling me that I shouldn't go to my thermostat and raise it up to like 90 degrees and try to attempt yoga in my house, right? It'd be a very expensive bill.
Yeah, and I would say that's another form of yoga. They have heated yoga, but it's not necessarily the starting place for everyone, especially for, when we look at our program that we've offered at Roswell and for our cancer survivors, that may not be the most appropriate place. And if it's not recommended by your doctor, I would definitely not start with that. But yeah, and your heat bill might suffer from that.
Exactly. So yes, a plethora of resources online, and of course on our YouTube page, so check it out, and I'm sure keep an eye out for the series coming this summer with Dr. Glaser in it. We have very much getting close to 12:30, so I kind of want to just do one sort of wrap up and see if you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share with us.
I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to talk today with everyone, and that Roswell's offering these series for our patients and our community. And I hope that maybe some of this resonates with everyone, just about taking a few moments for self-care in these very difficult times, right? This is something that we all need, whether or not you're in the healthcare workforce or the front lines, or you're at home with your families and trying to keep everyone safe. Just finding moments of time to take it out for yourself and try to just settle in and let go of anything that's not serving you.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Glaser, for taking time out of your day to be able to teach us a little bit of a series. And again, to all of our attendees, I hope you guys all got your chairs out and came out and did a little bit of breathing with us this afternoon. I know I did a little bit, and I definitely think I need to do a little bit more later, and especially because it's Friday. You have a little bit more time. We're about to head into the weekend. You can really take all this advice and take it to heart. And yeah, go look up our YouTube page, the Roswell Park YouTube page, and check out some of those videos there. Dr. Glaser does a great job with all of those. So if any of your questions were not answered today, we do continue to encourage you to reach out to your care team, as well as continue to tune into future webinars that will continue to address even more topics and questions. And just sort of a disclaimer we continue to put out there that we do update our COVID-19 page on our website that does have additional FAQs and more. You can check that out at roswellpark.org/coronavirus. Now, the video from today will also be available to view on demand, and of course, a link will be sent to your email. We encourage you to stay tuned to roswellpark.org/patient webinars, and also your email to register for upcoming webinars, which will continue to be offered on Fridays. Have a wonderful day, everyone. And I guess today, of all days, I think we would like to say to everyone, namaste. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.